Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Dan Simmons. I'm a research director at Caretta Research. We've heard a lot about sport today, a lot about shopping, a lot about advertising, but we haven't talked about the other really important foundation of television, which is news. And that's about to change. So I'm here with Maxime Carboni from Euronews, and we're going to talk about exactly that. So how they've changed from a legacy network to something much newer. So Maxime, why don't you, for those that are unfamiliar with Euronews, explain a little bit about them and your role at the company.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here. Again, a rather different discussion from the ones we had before. So in a nutshell, for some of you not aware of what Euronews is about, that's a 30+ years old company, which is an international news network. And nowadays we operate up to 20 channels and operate in 160 countries. Started from being a real TV-oriented organization to nowadays obviously a hyper-production unit gathering 20 languages and 20 media again on web platforms, TV station, and also everything related to fast and connecting of things that we're going to discuss today.
So you made rather an early transition from being a broadcaster to becoming sort of CTV and FAST leader. Why did you do that, and how did you go about it?
Listen, news is a specific beast in a way. The market is really competitive. Nowadays, you can definitely see that with all what's happening in the geopolitical world, you also have an impact. And news is also really expensive to produce, really complex to handle. And your goal overall is to remain independent, as we are. We're not a public service, so the idea in the end of the day is to maximize the number of touch points and eyeballs in the sake of being consumed and make the people much more use to get to your platforms to be informed. And you can only do that by being able to access new markets and generate new revenues. So we started CTV and FAST ecosystem and working in that field 5 years ago in the sake of touching new type of people in new regions, and also with the objectives of generating new revenues thanks to data aggregation and partnerships with OEMs, with hardware providers, and providing to that market 11 channels right from the start in 2019.
And how important have partnerships been in that journey?
It's critical. That's the things we discussed before. Obviously, you have to partner on the one side with the right technical people, with a proper strategy first, as well as with a real added value. Nowadays, for very big major companies, it's rather interesting to have single IP channels, catalog channels. On our side, we decided to take a bit of time and do all the tech development in-house to provide the live channels to all the CTV and FAST markets. Then the second stage was you should be seen in the right way with the right UX and the right people. So then you get to partner with the usual suspect that everybody knows, the Samsung, the LG, the Rakuten, and all of that. Nowadays, we operate all those channels in over 60 platforms related to CTV and OTT, and again in 11 languages, as we mentioned. And then you get to the stage of you are there for a couple of years, you start struggling in getting access to data, you start to seeing your fill rate increasing a bit, but the CPM being blurred one month to another. So you get to the monetization, which we discussed just before. With whom should you partner in terms of media sales house? What are the innovation technologies or partnerships which will allow you to have a better fill rate advertising-wise? And the other way around, with what kind of players would you be able to partner so that you enhance your marketing and product discoverability, which is a major problem.
Okay, so you've established this position now. What's next for you? How are you building on these concepts to grow?
On that, news is not so specific. Meaning that the bottom line is, as said, be able to generate revenues and aggregate data. The situation we are in at the moment is we have those 11 channels, which we are providing the Spanish in Spain, the Italian media in Italy, the Spanish one in Latin America, the Portuguese in Brazil, and so on. So we need to work on the product development first to maximize the size and the typology of inventory that we can address, because news is not for all the type of advertisers. News can also drive different types of usages, and not all the brands are eager to collaborate with us from a monetization perspective. That's why we're going to work on new types of products and media. We're going to release a travel channel this year, which will allow us not only to address different type of users, but also new types of markets. The other way around, Euronews again, 20 languages, over 10,000 hours of fresh content produced a year, 18 offices all over Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. And when you're in Spain, in your Airbnb in Barcelona, you basically access the Spanish channel of Euronews and basta. So in the sake of being able to touch new types of audience and people, we're going to do like some others did, which is building an ecosystem where you can find all the rest of content we have, linear, non-linear, podcasts, even articles, and build sort of a Euronews Plus ecosystem to increase dramatically the size of inventory. The engagement might be obviously less important than when you are the channel number 4 on Samsung TV Plus in Spain with Euronews Spanish. But that's the same goal. Product diversification, UX development, in the sake of having more data and revenues. So as far as FAST is concerned, these are the main thing, with again, the improvement of monetization. For 5 years again, we were lucky enough to have partners which have been releasing us data over approximately 60 million hours streamed a year, pretty much. And thanks to that, we're also able to use this with our in-house teams and monetization partners to increase and the quantity of advertisers we are bringing into the CTV space, our classic advertising clients, or helping as much as we can, increasing, same thing, fill rate and CPM.
So you mentioned the Euronews Plus environment there. So how does that work for a consumer? Sorry, that's not on our rehearsed questions, but
yeah, sure.
Yeah,
no.
It sounds interesting.
Again, the example, the one I gave you is really an example, again, dated 2 weeks ago. There was the Mobile World Congress in Barcelona. You know that everybody's fighting for an accommodation. Most of you have potentially been to Barcelona for tourism. And our strategy has always been, we work with our partners. They handle, by the way, the monetization. And as we are news and we have a live product, we provide that media first as an anchorage for the rest of the ecosystem. Then again, considering that two of our major pillars are being independent and multilingualism, with product being adapted for every audience, we have, for instance, 5 media, which are 5 franchises, which are operating in Serbia, Bulgaria, Albania, Georgia, Romania, and the list goes on as far as languages are concerned. So if you are a Greek person nowadays, traveling anywhere, or having your own device working with Cosmote, working with the platforms there, the number of live news channels there is dramatically less important than in the UK or France. And our market share, thank God, is way bigger. So the goal is, on top of our B2C apps, iOS app that everybody has, is to use the connected devices, CTV being part of it, to be able to offer this product everywhere, so that when you get into this app, you would find the 20 live versions of your news, as well as all the content curated as sort of a Netflix, in a way. So you could access any kind of content that we are producing with the same objective of data generation and revenues at first. And then we're also eager to get, obviously, to the product personification. We're playing with algorithms of OEM every day. We're suffering from the one of Google and Meta every day. I'm not even mentioning X. So in that ecosystem, we also want to be able ourselves to showcase to the people things they would like without just showing them every time the same thing. If you get on social media nowadays, one of the problems is obviously misinformation. The other problem is the hyper-personalization. When your kids are going to get on Instagram or Twitter or yourself, after 2 years, you're going to see always the same type of thing. Which means that's one thing we have to play with. But in our own ecosystem, we wish to dress it a bit differently.
So how do you manage that? Steering people towards, presumably we're talking about not funneling people down the same topic, right? You're trying to steer people to broaden their horizons,
I mean, obviously they're going to watch Euronews content in some ways. And by nature, news is obviously relating what's happening on a daily basis. So the thematics are changing all the time. The thing is, we want to stick to the number one thing for us, which is, again, being independent in the sake that we're not perceiving public money, there's no public agenda, and that brand, which is was known to be old-fashioned, in the sense of old journalism, we want to keep that, but also we have to play with the rules of the market in the sake of keeping that advantage. Shoppable TV, that was discussed before, critical for revenues. AI application, critical for development, very dangerous for content creation. So we are playing with all those rules and, I would say, new rules of our own social life and market. But the other way around, nowadays, if you only think that you're going to target, or if you are building the future of your company, thinking that people will only get to linear TV or YouTube, tune in and wait for the news bulletin or whatever to comes next, we're going to lose a bunch of the people that we want to target. Thus, the personalization.
Okay. So the Euronews plus personalization, that's your answer to the social media problem, right? To try and...
One-off. Again, let's take a concrete example. It's not planned, but Big Ben explodes in 10 minutes. What you're all going to do is mobile phone, you're going to get addressed by the brands you're consuming, BBC, whatever it is. Then you're going to potentially get to social media, Twitter being one of the most reactive, Instagram as well. And then you're going to potentially watch TV, YouTube, or get to live news if something major happened. One of the best example we had, as you can hear, I'm French, I'm sure you could have all noticed, during Notre Dame fire in Paris, the score skyrocketed, but 30 minutes after, or 40 minutes after. So we have to play with that value chain. So we have to be available on social media, and particularly nowadays. It's whether you leave the floor to everyone and say like, okay, there's only opinion media and social media nowadays. There's no debate anymore. Me, I'm old-fashioned and I want to do gross journalism, so I'm not running for buzz. And just to give you a clue, each thing that we are posting has to be checked by at least 2 journalists from 2 nationalities different that are not. We have a process to avoid racing for buzz all the time. But you cannot not be visible and play with social media. So we are being there with our own means first, and with our own rules. And we also have an answer for the guys who are used to consume us and want to get more into what we're doing, which is obviously that potential CTV app.
Okay. We've mentioned AI a couple of times, it's come up. So yeah, what are the rules for you with AI? Where are you using it as an organization? Where won't you go near it? Where's your...
So, same thing. You can see AI in plenty of ways. That is a business opportunity, as well as an organization facilitator, as well as a threat in terms of creation of the content and competition even, could be. So nowadays it's critical for us in terms of localization. We are finalizing your work in the sake of being able to have a scalable organization for video to video, text to speech, text to audio, localization, which will always be human curated, for instance. We're never going to go in the route of full automatized. The second thing, you need to assist the journalist in their daily life so that these guys spend their time creating proper stories that will, same thing, drive more traffic, attention, engagement, revenues. So we are, at the moment, working on an internal chart. None of the journalists has the right to create stories by just using ChatGPT, for instance. And
we have the same thing as an analyst house.
Well, of course. I mean, most of us nowadays, we're using it a bit, but nowadays, if you have a look again at the ecosystem on CTV, on FAST, or your daily life, brands and old-fashioned, in a way, brands like us, we have a role which is even more important than before, I guess. And we cannot get again into the game of we don't work with AI because we have to, and that's an amazing opportunity. But we're never going to go and be a full AI-driven or AI-operated media.
Okay, we've got our last 15 seconds. So finish up. What would you like to see from your FAST and CTV partners that would help you be more successful as a business and achieve your goals?
More revenues. And no data sharing. Again, we're not going to have the time here, but we are a legacy media. We have direct sales people based in London, most of them, in Germany, in Dubai, whatever. These guys are selling advertising for 30 years to global announcers, governments, whatever. Nowadays, the problem we have is educating agencies and brands that CTV is a reliable market, and they have all the reasons to see that. But if they were first more data sharing in between the main players and us, that would make our life easier to bring money and value to those ecosystems. And the last thing, I would end on that, if there was a system of sort, and particularly in Europe, where all the OEMs, content providers, and all of that could have sort of a marketplace where, as an advertiser nowadays, I could buy a CTV campaign in 5 minutes, like I can do nowadays on Meta, on YouTube, on Instagram, just by clicking. That would not only bring more values to everyone, and that would avoid the same thing, that all the revenues are going to GAFA, and potentially finalizing proper European operations like us, which I guess will be quite helpful in the month to come.
Cool. Right, thank you. Well, that's a nice thought to end on.
Yeah, sorry. Hope it wasn't too much.
Great.
Thank you.